The Dark Knight is an iconic comic book movie, and arguably the greatest Batman movie made so far. The reason I feel like it was so well received and has aged so well is because Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, and David Goyer were able to capture the zeitgeist Americans were feeling during the later years of the War on Terror. The characters of The Dark Knight represent forces, philosophies, and archetypes that Americans and the entire Western world were coming to grips with from 9/11 to the wars that came from 9/11. The Dark Knight was an acknowledgement of how our world had changed since 9/11, which is why it resonated so well with audiences and is taken so seriously compared to other comic book films. Now that America and the Western world are beyond the War on Terror years that ended around the time of the pandemic, we can take a look back and analyze The Dark Knight to see what the film was trying to say about the zeitgeist of the time, and we can use The Dark Knight as a tool to unpack the early War on Terror years and how they permanently changed our world. Before we get too far into the analysis, it would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps making more of these videos. Thank you. Right off the bat, I want to acknowledge that besides making such an iconic statement by capturing the zeitgeist, The Dark Knight is also just an incredibly well-made film. This is Christopher Nolan at the apex of his career, and Hans Zimmer is defining his iconic score in this film. When I saw this movie as a teenager, I needed to pee about halfway through it and held it until the end because I didn't want to miss anything when I saw it for the first time. And I think, honestly, that's bigger than any other compliment I can give it, is that I was willing to hold it in the whole time. Even the first sequence of the film, Joker's bank heist, is making a statement on the times. The act of having the robbers turn on each other after their part is done is emblematic of an economy with no loyalty. Once your purpose has been filled, you are disposed of. The second big statement is the bank manager casually sitting in his office, turning out to be a mobster with a shotgun. There is a statement being made about the mob and banks being linked. As we find out, there is basically, in this world, a legitimized organized crime, something that the Joker is not. Bankers are pretending to be mobsters, mobsters are pretending to be bankers. The film is telling us the two are the same. Sort of a commentary, probably, on the subprime mortgage crisis, and sort of the metaphor of an institutionally legitimized evil, so large that good characters in the film don't even pretend that they can fully remove it. But the Joker isn't an institutional evil, and can be more easily fully removed, which is what the film and characters hyperfixate on removing, because it's achievable, even though you could say that the Joker is less evil than the bankers/mobsters. Which brings us to the main antagonist of the film, the Joker, obviously. This incarnation of the Joker represents chaos more than any other, and in the context of this film, represents terrorism. The blowing up of buildings, videos of violence being relayed by the media, and most importantly for the Joker, it's about sending a message. All of these tactics are used by the terrorists during the War on Terror, so the metaphor is very obvious. And one little moment that I think is really emblematic of this is the reason the Joker makes up his stories about his scars isn't just to mess with people. As he tells the first story to Gamble, by the end of his story, he's not looking at Gamble, he's looking at Gamble's henchmen. The story isn't for Gamble at that point, because obviously he's about to kill Gamble. The story is for the observer. And Joker knows this. He is something of a meta-terrorist. He knows there is an effect outside the act itself, similar to how the 9/11 attackers specifically chose to attack the World Trade Center and Pentagon. Their intention was far more to make a statement to the observer than just killing people and destroying a building. The Joker wants to destroy all institutions, from the legitimate city, the quasi-legitimate mob, and even the institution of the Batman. Now with this problem the good characters of Gotham have, they have to figure out how to stop the Joker. Gordon is a realist who knows he can't be perfect and nothing will be, but he has to do what he can to solve the problem with the skills and tools that he has. Dent wants to be purely on the up and up and be an idealist, but as we find out with his two-faced coin, he angles, shoots, and breaks the rules when needed. So he is also not the white knight that he wants to be. And finally we have the Batman, who goes around the system and exacts the justice he sees fit. Batman's existence in cooperation with Gordon the police represents a moral shortcoming. The Batman is a vigilante the police secretly have no desire of catching and leverage it so that they don't need to be as effective in a world of constant budget cuts and resource shortfalls. He is a resource that they can tap into, and the only cost is their integrity, which in this world is starting to mean very little when things are getting so dire and the system that they are currently operating in is so ineffective. In this film, Batman represents the choices and deals we made to fix this problem on the War on Terror that are not above board, basically. The logos Batman is selling to Gordon and Dent is that they can't catch these criminals on their own. They need Batman to go around the rules so they can catch these guys. A similar logos to the justification for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq was flimsy at best and outright illegally lying at its worst. It was still needed to stop the evildoers. This is a real term used by the President of the United States. A term that would make more sense in a comic book movie. And Lucius Fox represents the technology and means to fight the evildoers, specifically the echolocation that Batman uses to defeat the Joker at the end. This technology represents the surveillance state that was created post 9/11. This metaphor is very direct, with commentary from the filmmakers basically, where Fox states that this power is too strong for any one person to wield. And Batman honors Fox's wishes and destroys the technology after catching the Joker. A statement by the filmmakers that it's okay to use this technology to stop the War on Terror, to stop the great evil as the Joker or the terrorists or whatever, but it should be stopped being used when it's over. And I think that this is the fatal flaw in the ideology of the Dark Knight, which is it's okay to compromise your standards if the threat is large enough. But once you have defeated the threat, you need to roll back to where you were before. I feel like that this is so inaccurate to the real world. Once a line has been crossed, a right has been denied, a privacy has been made invalid, you are just setting the precedent for it to be crossed again. The surveillance state was never rolled back after the War on Terror. It has only gotten worse in the years following it. The catharsis at the climax of The Dark Knight is that Batman is going to take the fall for Dent. So what they did to the mobsters will stick, and this is because Batman can operate outside the rules. Dent followed. The catharsis is that even though everyone had to compromise their standards and their morals to win, it was still worth it. The threat was that great. This catharsis resonates so much with the zeitgeist of its time because I feel like that's how genuinely people felt about the War on Terror. We compromised our morals, we compromised people's rights, we put our country in massive amounts of debt, but it was worth it because the threat was that bad. And this is where I am highly skeptical of this position. Obviously, hindsight 2020, even during the height of the War on Terror, the chance an American was going to be affected by a terrorist was incredibly small. Yet the small chance and the fear the terrorists instilled in Americans was so strong that we allowed our rights to be infringed upon, start 2 unnecessary wars leading to the deaths of 500,000 people, and put our government into trillions of dollars in debt. To me, the terrorists won. We were brought down to their level, which is all they wanted to prove. A god could bleed. A more level-headed approach would have saved many more lives and money and would have kept us just as safe without compromising our standards and our morals. This reaction proved how fearful Americans are, where the anxiety of any possibility of anything bad happening was worth more than our freedoms. Now we live in a heavier surveillance state, and our military operates with very little oversight. Our country has become more techno-fascist because of all this. And films like The Dark Knight give us the catharsis that it was needed. We were being told the ideology we wanted to hear, that we made the right choice. We were sold the techno-fascist dream draped in the cool military police state style of Nolan's Batman. And for me, this is a complicated analysis, because when I went and saw the movie as a teenager, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. It was so cool. And it is an amazing cinematic achievement. I mean, I would give the film an A-. It is easily Nolan's best film, most iconic film, and most impactful. And I heavily enjoyed the film and felt its catharsis, but once you really dig deep into the ideology of The Dark Knight, it does not have a good message. Thanks for listening to my analysis of The Dark Knight. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you would consider supporting me on Patreon, it goes a long way to helping me make more of these videos. Thank you.